Hello and welcome back to the simulated 2024 F1 World Championship. This is round number 19 of 24 from Austin in the United States. We're back after a month's break. It's the second American race out of 3 this year, it's the first of 2 triple headers in a row, and, best of all, the sprint weekend is back. More time that I have to spend on this game? Hooray! Here's how the drivers' standings shape up after last time out at Singapore. Despite retiring from the race last time out, Verstappen maintains a 34-point gap to Norris in P2, with Leclerc now being a solitary point behind the McLaren driver in P3, leapfrogging Tsunoda who moves down to P4. Hamilton remains in 5th, and the 2 Spaniards as Sainz and Alonso are tied on points behind, with the pair sitting at 131 points each. Gasly remains in 8th, and Piastri moves ahead of Albon for P9, with the Williams driver now rounding off the top 10. The constructors' standing sees Ferrari retake the lead, moving 13 points ahead of Red Bull, who occupy 2nd once more. McLaren lose some ground on the pair but remain in 3rd, with RB only just remaining in 4th ahead of Mercedes, who are now only 4 points behind. Aston Martin continue to occupy 6th, and Sauber are 50 points behind them in 7th. Williams extend that gap over Alpine in 8th, and Haas continue to occupy the foot of the table. Compared to the actual standings, Verstappen's gap at the top continues to slowly shrink, with Norris now 52 points behind the Dutchman after taking the win at Singapore. Leclerc continues to hold P3, but Piastri is now only 8 points behind the Ferrari driver. Sainz is still ahead of both Mercedes drivers in an ever-intensifying fight for P5, and Perez begins to get a little lonely in 8th. Alonso remains in 9th, and Hülkenberg moves up into the top 10, leapfrogging Stroll. As for the constructors, McLaren extend their lead over Red Bull, putting themselves in prime position for the title. Ferrari slip back slightly in 3rd, but are still very much in the title fight with a good car underneath them. Mercedes look content in P4, along with Aston Martin in P5. The battle for P6 intensifies, with Haas now only 3 points behind RB, with Williams and Alpine following suit, 3 points also separating the 2 teams. Sauber continue to remain useless in last with 0 points. Now, it's time to find out who will be racing as for the United States GP and also for the Mexican GP next time out, as we now have only 2 drivers on the wheel, those being Russell and Alonso. So, without further ado, let's spin the wheel and decide who will be racing around COTA and Mexico City in a week's time. And the wheel selects George Russell in the Mercedes, which means we will be racing as Alonso next time out in Mexico. For now though, our focus will be on hopefully getting a good result for Russell and Mercedes around the circuit of the Americas. So, let's get ready for the United States Grand Prix.
The party in the USA continues right now. The circuit of the Americas, undulating, high speed, downright thrilling. It is time for qualifying to set the grid for the Grand Prix.
So here we are then in the Mercedes garage as George Russell ready for the sprint qualifying session. Remember, it is a sprint weekend. We are back with the sprints this weekend for the US Grand Prix. So we've got the sprint qualifying first, then the sprint, then the actual qualifying, then for the actual race. So here we are at the end of SQ1. We take P1 at the end of SQ1, meaning we got some decent pace here in the US Grand Prix, at least in qualifying spec anyway. And we've lost from SQ1, Valtteri Bottas, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, Lance Stroll, and then all the way at the back is Logan Sargent. Yes, Logan Sargent is still in our game. He has not been replaced by Colapinto as of yet, and maybe he won't, who knows. I don't really trust Codemasters with that anymore. As I move on to SQ2 now. Moving the end of SQ2, we set a lap time for SQ2. And we are also in P1 for that, making us getting us easily through to SQ3. And we've lost from SQ2 Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, and in 15th place is Zhou Guanyu. Also, Daniel Ricciardo still in this season despite being dropped for Liam Lawson. So, there's 2 driver swaps that this game does need to do. But nonetheless, they stay in our Simulator Championship for the time being until Codemasters does update them, because I can't even mod the game to swap the drivers as of right now. So there we go. As we move on to SQ3 now, we go through the first corner. A bit squirrely coming out of the first corner there, going up the hill into that tight left-hander, and now we've got the complex, like left, right here. taking it pretty much near on flat out. This car is really giving us a lot of grip here. As we move to the end of Sector 1, we set a purple Sector 1, looking pretty good for us in the Mercedes so far, but remember this is qualifying for the sprint, not for the actual race, so we hopefully this qualifying pace does translate into good qualifying pace for the actual qualifying later on. But nonetheless, we do have a car in front of us, but it is quite a bit of a distance in front of us. Hopefully it doesn't get in the way as the lap continues. As we head down the back straight in the DRS zone, moving to the end of Sector 2, heading into the tight left-hander at the end of the DRS straight, taking it pretty nicely there. As we move to the end of Sector 2 and the beginning of Sector 3, we also set purple Sector 2 for sprint qualifying 3, which is very good. I don't know what the car is in front of us. I think it's an RB, I think it's Sonoda, but I can't be positive about that. As we move now to this Turkey-esque, like, multiple right-hand corner, which is actually quite cool. And then we head into this deceptively fast left-hander, keep it between the lines, very good stuff. Move into the final corner now, going around, we kind of lose it going for the last corner, that definitely cost us a bit of time. But we crossed the line. Is it good enough for sprint pole? It is indeed good enough for sprint pole. Very good stuff. In fact, we were well ahead of everyone else. We were 3/4 of a second ahead of second, and the only person to set a 1:31. So there we go. After sprint qualifying, George Russell is on pole for the sprint. Verstappen in second, Lando Norris in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth, Kevin Magnussen fifth for the Haas. A very good result for him in the sprint qualifying. Teammate Hamilton is in 6th, Carlos Sainz is in 7th, Alexander Albon in 8th, Yuki Tsunoda is 9th, and Oscar Piastri rounds up the top 10 in his McLaren. And there we go, that's the first of 2 qualifyings done for this session, for this weekend. Sprint qualifying is done, so now we move on to the United States Grand Prix Sprint.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management, it's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. We have 10 turns to the left and 10 turns to the right here at the fantastic Circuit of the Americas. Overtaking opportunities into turn 1 and turn 12 at this anti-clockwise track. It's 3.6 miles long and we should see average lap speeds of around 126 miles per hour. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who will start from P2. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Leclerc, Magnussen, Hamilton, Sainz, Albon, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Perez, Ricciardo, Gasly, Joe, Bottas, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Stroll, and Logan Sargent. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We will soon find out. Welcome to the commentary box overlooking the circuit. I'm Alex Jakes, and joining us for the race today is Naomi Schiff. So, a sprint race today, and that means lights to flag, no stops. And how is that going to affect the driver behind the wheel? Now, those final hours before a race, did you have a routine?
Well, every driver certainly has their own way of preparing themselves before a race. But I can tell you that pre-race rituals are a real thing. When I was in go-karting, I used to touch every wheel in a specific sequence before I got into the kart. And then I stepped up to cars and had a specific set of fireproof base layers just for race day. So watch the drivers when they're on the grid. Some may be sitting on the floor and isolating, others may be up to other things that they do. But these little things really help their minds get ready for the race.
They went back to the bloody routine line. That routine line is a bloody routine at this point. But anyway, we're on the grid for the sprint, looking at a strategy here. Seems very standard. No stops, obviously. There is the alternate strategy of the one stop, but we're not going to do that. We're going to stick with the medium tyres for this sprint. Very good stuff, and I'm sure everyone else does the same. Yep, they do. Everyone's starting on the mediums. Everyone's starting on fresh mediums. No stops looking likely here for the sprint, which is pretty much par for the course for any sprint. And yeah, we're starting from pole position for the sprint. Verstappen alongside us on P2, Lando Norris behind us on P3. So the top 2 in the simulated season, and the real season for that matter, are lining up around us. So this should be very interesting. I wonder if Norris will get his elbows out into turn 1 to try and overtake his championship rival. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll try to play it safe. It is the sprint after all. But we are in the prime hot spot here in pole. We see Leclerc in P4, I believe, and Magnussen in P5. He could challenge into turn 1. We all know what Magnussen's like. Hamilton in P6 there as well. We're waiting for the back of the grid to line up. Logan Sargent in P20 in one of his like 3 home races that you're supposed to have IRL this year, but he only got 1. So unfortunate for him. But nonetheless, we move on to 5 red lights. And it's lights out, away we go. The lights went out very quickly there, but we do get away pretty well. Also, Norris gets away pretty well. Verstappen having a pretty shocking start. Going down to P4, side by side with Leclerc going into turn 1. Even Tsunoda's having a look at the inside. Tsunoda having a great start as well in the RB. But we do hold on to the lead, and Norris is now up to P2 and right up our gearbox. As you can see, Leclerc and Verstappen going side by side through the technical sequence of corners. Leclerc just holding on to P3. Verstappen not having a great start in the sprint, going down 2 places from P2 to P4. But it is still us, George Russell in the lead, Lando Norris right behind us in P2, and Tsunoda also having a good start up to P5 as well. Sainz actually getting a good start as well, he's up to P6, Hamilton dropping down to P7, and Magnussen probably getting the worst start of all in the top 10, moving down from 5th to 8th on lap 1 here, with Albon just behind him in P9, and Piastri still in P10. But yeah, as you can see, we're still holding on to the lead, but Norris is definitely chasing us down. As you can see, Leclerc now being hounded by Max Verstappen. Verstappen coming back at Leclerc, going at the end of Sector 2 into Sector 3. And I think Leclerc just holds on to P3. He does, only barely. But that could be... Oh no, never mind. Verstappen going down the inside there of Leclerc. But Leclerc still holding on to P3 as we go through the multiple right-hand corners. And yes, Leclerc just holds on to P3, but that could be a battle that lasts through the entire sprint. Verstappen definitely needed to get back into the contention here for the sprint, as his championship rival is now 2 places ahead of him, which gives him a 2-point swing if it ends this way. But Norris is not content with a 2-point swing. He's content for a 3-point swing as he's chasing us down the back straight with DRS. He goes to the outside of the corner. We stick on the inside for the tight left-hander. We break a little bit later and hold off Norris for the time being. And as you can see on the timing there, Leclerc and Verstappen still battling it out for P3. And yeah, Verstappen go down the inside here on the right-hand corner, which does give Leclerc the inside of this left-hand corner. But the AI do get a lot of traction around the outside of these corners, and it is evident here as Verstappen gets a lot of traction coming out of that corner. And Verstappen now up to P3 ahead of Leclerc. Can he chase down Russell and Norris in front? Only time will tell, but there is a big DRS train forming behind the pair of them, Verstappen and Leclerc, so anything could happen in that DRS train. As we move on to lap 5 now, not lap 5, lap 8 I should say, Norris still hounding us for P1, and he's a lot closer this time than he was before, and he actually blasts by us going down the straight, and we can't even respond. We tuck him behind, and Norris takes the lead of the sprint race. And behind us, Leclerc and Verstappen still battling it out for P3. This fight has gone on pretty much all sprint. It's been incredible to watch. 2 absolutely amazing drivers at their prime battling it out for P3. Leclerc going around the outside takes the honours on lap 8, but I guarantee this is not over yet, and Verstappen will definitely try to come back at him as the sprint race goes on. Same with us and Lando Norris. Norris still in the lead of the race, but on the next lap, lap 9, we stick very much behind him going into the DRS zone on the back straight. He does get a bit of a better launch, but we're still like 4 tenths behind, and with DRS and some battery, we should be able to blast by him, also with the slipstream. And sure enough, we do. We hold on to the slipstream. He tries to cover the inside. We go around the outside of him, going down the corner. And we're still side by side going through the corner. Lando getting a pretty good launch, but we've still got our nose in it as we go down the inside of the right-hander. And we're still side by side as we go through Sector 3. Norris now having the inside, but we got the outside here as well. And along with the AI, we do have better traction coming out the corner. And we take the lead back from Lando Norris on lap 9 going into lap 10. And Verstappen also re-overtaking Leclerc as well, but we don't see that. As we move now on to lap 13 going on to lap 14, Norris still right behind us. Still trying to take the win of the sprint race. And going into turn 1, you can see the timing on the left there. He's gaining. He goes out the inside. going into turn 1. A very good overtaking spot there. We do leave him enough room. There might have been a bit of contact, but no damage done. As we go side by side through turn 2, and unbelievably, we attempt to go side by side for him for the technical corner. Norris backs out, and we keep P1 for now, but Norris is not giving this up without a fight. So this is a fight that's going to last for the entirety of the sprint. I guarantee it. Very, very exciting stuff for the lead of the sprint, and for P3 in that matter. As we look further down the order, we see Ocon now in P15, and he's pulling over to the side. I think his engine has gone kaput. The Renault engine, which is not going to be a Renault engine for much longer. Alpine moving to Mercedes engines for 2026. But yes, the Renault engine has gone bang. He pulls over to the side, and Ocon is our first retirement of this sprint race. Very unfortunate there for Ocon, but he was down in P14, 15. So he wasn't really fighting for much. Hopefully they can get that engine repaired for qualifying and then for the race as well. As we move on now to the penultimate lap of the sprint, lap 18 of 19, Norris still right behind us as we go down into turn 1. He's going to attempt to make a move down the inside. He's going for the move, but we stick around the outside, just holding him off a little bit. We do actually run wide there, and we lose our back end, and we tap the side of Norris's car. Thankfully, no damage done for the pair of us as we go side by side again for the technical sequence of corners, and we just hold on. Whether that's legal or not is another matter, but the game has decided that I am allowed the overtakes, so we keep the lead for now. But with Norris being right behind us going into the back straight in a moment, you can see he's just like 3.5 tenths behind. 3 tenths now. He gained a hell of a launch from those sequence of corners. And now as we move on to the back straight, he is in prime position to re-overtake us on the penultimate lap of this race. So as we head down the straight now, we try to cover him off on the inside, but there's not really much we can do. Norris with a superior straight line speed and the DRS blast by us on the penultimate lap, which means our only option now is to stick behind him as we go into the final lap of this sprint. As for behind us, the train behind us has actually caught us up a little bit thanks to our squabbling. But they are still about 2.5 seconds behind. Leclerc and Verstappen are still battling it away for P3 and P4. Tsunoda's still in P5. I think all of them have stayed the same since the beginning of the sprint, since lap 1 at least. So, yeah, as we move on to the final lap of the sprint now, we have remained behind Norris. We're very much right behind and going down the main straight with 2 tenths behind, which gives us a very good launch here down the straight. And with DRS, we blast by Norris again. Going down the straight into the corner, we make the move done before we even get to the corner. As you can see behind, Verstappen also making the same move on Leclerc, going into the corner as well, blasting right by him. Leclerc has no answer. So Leclerc, with a bit of lapse of judgment, has allowed Verstappen to go back up to P3 in the sprint. Fascinating stuff, but at the front, Norris has to concede here. I don't think he's going to get another overtaking move unless we make a mistake in the last couple of corners here. But that's looking very unlikely as we move on now to the penultimate corner of the sprint through the left-hander. We had a brilliant fight with Norris the entire way for this sprint, but it is George Russell who comes out on top and wins the United States Grand Prix sprint.
Well done, guys. Brilliant.
So that's 8 points for us, 8 points for Mercedes, along with Hamilton's, I believe, 3 points down in 6th. Lando Norris is driving away there in 2nd place. He wanted to win badly, but he did not get it. He has to settle for 2nd in this sprint. But there's still the main race to come. So yeah, George Russell wins the United States Grand Prix sprint. Lando Norris in P2, Verstappen in P3, Charles Leclerc in P4, Yuki Tsunoda in P5, Carlos Sainz in P6, Hamilton actually in 7th rather than 6th. I think Sainz overtook him right at the end there. And then Kevin Magnussen rounds off the points-paying positions for the sprint in 8th. As for the rest of the classified finishers, we've got Alexander Albon in 9th, Oscar Piastri in 10th, Sergio Perez in 11th, Ricciardo in 12th, Alonso down in 13th, Pierre Gasly in 14th, Valtteri Bottas in 15th, ahead of his teammate Zhou Guanyu, who's 16th, Nico Hülkenberg down in 17th, Logan Sargent in 18th, and the last of the classified finishers is Lance Stroll in P19. And we have one retirement from the sprint, which was Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. And there we go. That is the sprint race done. But we still got more to come. Next up on the list is the United States Grand Prix qualifying.
The party in the USA continues right now. The circuit of the Americas, undulating, high speed, downright thrilling. It is time for qualifying to set the grid for the Grand Prix.
And here we are, back again in the Mercedes garage with George Russell. It's time for the main qualifying, which will set the grid for the main race itself. And as we saw in the sprint qualifying, we had some very good qualifying pace, not so good race pace, but definitely some amazing qualifying pace, so we should be very good for pole position here. And indeed, in Q1, we do get P1 once again, continuing our perfection through all the qualifying sessions. And we lost from Q1, Logan Sargent, who actually outqualifies his teammate, Alexander Albon, who's down in P17, Esteban Ocon in 18th, Valtteri Bottas in 19th, and Nico Hülkenberg is P20 in the Haas. Very unfortunate there for Nico Hülkenberg. We expect a lot better from him in qualifying, but he is starting last for the main race here in the US. Haas's home race, in fact, as we move on to Q2 now. Once again, P1 in Q2. And we've lost from Q2, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, the big shock of Q2 there, along with Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. 14th and 15th for the pair there, Leclerc and Piastri having a very dismal qualifying, and they're only starting P14 and P15 for this race. Very unfortunate stuff there for the pair. But nonetheless, we're through to Q3. As we move on to Q3, starting our lap here, you can see Zhou has actually made it through into Q3. Very good stuff from there from him, along with Magnussen also making it into Q3, and both the RBs. Ricciardo joining his teammate Tsunoda in Q3, so very good stuff there for the RB team. But nonetheless, we're heading through our final lap of qualifying now, going through the technical left, right. Very good stuff. We set our purple sector 1. Lando Norris sets the fastest lap of qualifying so far, but is quickly dethroned by Max Verstappen, who goes 0.02 of a second faster than him, moving into the 132s. Very good stuff there from Max. Very close between Verstappen and Norris there. Should be expected, considering those two are very much the championship contenders in the simulated season and in real life. As we move on to the back straight now, we're still looking very good for pole position. Ricciardo's actually moved up a few spots, as you can see on the timing graphic there. Sainz now down to P6. As we head through to the end of Sector 2 now, we set a purple Sector 2 as well. Very good stuff. This lap has been very good so far. Not many mistakes, if any mistakes. We're doing pretty well following the line here. A little bit tight going out that corner there, but not too much damage done. As we move through the sequence of right-hand corners, moving to the last couple of corners of the circuit. Heading through the fast left-hander here, keeping it over the line. Very good stuff. Moving into the final corner now. Will we get a mistake here as we did in the sprint qualifying? No, we don't. We blast to the line. And with that time, yep, we're in P1. Pole position again. 2 poles in 2 qualifying sessions, and we absolutely decimated everyone there, 1.3 seconds ahead of second place. But Russell is in P1, Max Verstappen in P2, Lando Norris in P3, just like the sprint. But what isn't like the sprint is Zhou Guanyu in P4 and Daniel Ricciardo in P5. Very good qualifying from the pair there. Lewis Hamilton in P6, Carlos Sainz 7th, Gasly is 8th, Magnussen is 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda rounds up the top 10 in his RB. And there we go, that is the main qualifying done and dusted. The grid is set. It's now time for the United States Grand Prix.
Welcome to Austin, Texas for the United States Grand Prix. With lots of overtaking opportunities, this track is quickly becoming a firm fan favourite. As the clock ticks down to lights out, let's join the teams down on the grid. It's the Circuit of the Americas then. Situated 14 miles outside the great city of Austin, this is a 3.6 mile lap with 20 corners, 10 to the left and 10 to the right. Top speeds are around 200 miles per hour. Overtaking opportunities are available in turns 1 and 12, especially with that rear wing DRS wide open. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. George Russell will begin today's event in pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Norris, Zhou, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Sainz, Gasly, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, Stroll, Perez, Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Sargent, Albon, Ocon, Bottas, and Nico Hulkenberg rounds off the grid. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. Welcome to the commentary box. I'm Alex Jakes. Joining me for this one is Naomi Schiff. It feels like an obvious question, but I think everyone wants to know. At this stage, are you nervous or excited?
It certainly is a time leading up to the race where drivers feel quite nervous because that adrenaline is starting to build and it gets into your mind. So you've got to stay focused, try not to distract yourself too much. But I will say that it's once the formation lap starts, at least it was for me, that was a time where the nerves started to calm down and I got really honed in and focused on the start that was coming.
So here we are then on the grid as George Russell once again. 56 laps await us. We're looking at our strategy. We've got two different strategies, the one stop or the two stop. I decided to go with the one stop, and we're quite pretty much fueled up for the fueled up to the max here for this race. Very interesting stuff, but we do go for the one stop, and I believe a lot of the other cars are also going for the one stop. And indeed they are. Everyone's starting on the mediums apart from Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon, who both start on the softs. So interesting stuff there from the pair there. Everyone else starting on the mediums, so everyone else looking at the one stop. Not much variety in the pit stops, but hopefully it all works out for us. Hopefully we can give out another pole to victory here in the United States Grand Prix. This one definitely matters more than the sprint, but we did get 8 points from the sprint, which is very good. But yeah, top three looking very identical to what it was before. With me on pole, Verstappen on second. And then the nice in P3, we've got Zhou Guanyu now in fourth, who could make things interesting. And remember that Daniel Ricciardo is in P5 as well. Hamilton also starting in P6. So Hamilton could make a good start here as well. We shall see as we see the last of the cars line up on the grid. That's Hulkenberg down in P20. As we move on to the grid for the main race itself, it's 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go. A bit of a tentative start there, but Norris gets a fantastic start going off the grid. And Norris going around the outside of turn 1. We tried to take the inside. We go way too deep into the turn 1. And Norris, with his fantastic start, takes the lead of United States Grand Prix from turn 1. A fantastic start there from the McLaren driver. As we see Zhou now trying to go side by side with Verstappen going through the left to right technical sequence of corners. But Verstappen holds off the Chinese driver there. As Gasly has actually moved up to P5. Ricciardo moving down from P5 to P9. A shocking start there from the Australian driver. But it is Lando Norris who takes P1 at the beginning of this United States Grand Prix with a fantastic launch there from P3 on the grid. So yeah, we slipped down to P2 after making a mistake in turn 1. We did overcook ourselves going into turn 1 trying to defend Norris, and because of that Lando now takes the lead of this race. So all we can do now is hopefully stick to the back of him and hopefully try to re-overtake him when the DRS activates on the next lap. But yeah, fantastic start there from the McLaren driver, probably the biggest winner there from that start, and the biggest loser definitely is Ricciardo, moving down from P5 to P9. It was the same with Magnussen as well in the sprint. He started P5 and ended up P8. So P5 not a good place to start at this track apparently. As we move on to the next lap now, DRS is enabled and we have stuck behind Lando. Going down the back straight now, DRS enabled with the slipstream. We blast by him and retake the lead of this race. We're going to try and get a second ahead, but as we saw in the sprint, that is no easy task. We weren't able to do it. As you can see on the timing screens there, Zhou and Gasly going side by side through section 3 here, sector 3. And Gasly trying to overtake Zhou in the kick salvo, but Zhou having none of it, going down the inside. But as we saw, the outside line is actually the best line to have here. And Gasly shows that by getting ahead of Zhou. Gasly now to P4 in his Alpine. Very good stuff here for Pierre Gasly. He had a great start as well. He's now to P4. As we move on now to lap 8. As you can see on the timer screen, we've kind of cleared everyone here except for Norris and Verstappen. It's pretty much a three-way fight for the lead here. And Norris still sticking behind us, has the DRS now going down the back straight. And also Verstappen has the DRS, so he could be a threat as well. But Lando is the main threat here as he goes down the inside, going into the end of the DRS straight here. We try to stick around the outside. We keep our nose in it just going through sector 3 here. Now on the inside, trying to retake the lead, and indeed we do. But Norris is not giving up that fight as he now has the inside going into this tricky left-hander. And he does make a bit of a mistake actually going for the left-hander, which allows Verstappen to have a sniff at P2. But Lawrence just holds him off, and we keep the lead for the time being. So yeah, very competitive fight here for the lead going into this race here. As now we move on to lap 11, as we see Perez now being hounded by Nico Hülkenberg going into turn 1. This is for last. P19 and P20, Perez not having a good time with his soft tyres, and Hülkenberg blasts by him, and Perez is now last. While his teammate is fighting for the lead, Perez now down in last place. The soft tyre gamble has not worked out for him, and indeed it hasn't worked for Ocon either, as he comes into the pits on lap 15 now to swap onto the medium tyres. I believe he is doing a two-stopper going to the end of this race. Ocon putting on the mediums now, and is now joined Perez down at the back of the field. Not very good there. Soft tyres doesn't look very good here around this track, which, spoiler alert, I wish I learned during the race, but you're going to find that out later on. As we move on to lap 16 now, we've still got Lando and Verstappen behind us, and Lando now very much closer to us than he has been in previous laps. As he gets his DRS open, we tried to cover him off on the inside, but it's really not much of a fight. But I do make a lunge down the inside. I feel like I was confident on my brakes there. And the confidence pays off as I keep the lead of this race. But Norris is definitely hounding us. It's pretty much the same as the sprint race here. Norris hounding us, but we do have the added danger of Verstappen behind us as well. So we got two cars behind us chasing us down. And I decide on lap 23 to come into the pits, to put on the hard tyres, to go to the end of the race. So yes. We make our pit stop a little bit earlier than scheduled, but hopefully it'll give us some fresher tyres to hopefully get a gap over Norris and Verstappen once they come in for their pits, for their pit stops. So yeah, good pit stop there, 2.4, putting on the hard tyres. You can see we're moving down the field slightly, and we might actually end up coming out in traffic, which is not ideal. But we do come out just behind Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, but just ahead of his teammate Lance Stroll. So we are down in P11. We are on the fresher tyres though, so hopefully we can get some overtakes going quickly and efficiently, so that we don't lose out too much to Norris and Verstappen, but when they end up doing their pit stops as well. But depending on when they do their pit stops, they may end up in the same traffic as we do. So we end up pretty much pushing Alonso for the last last bit of Sector 1 there, as we move on to the beginning, heading into left-hander that leads onto the back straight. We lunge down the inside of Alonso with our fresher tyres. We make the move stick, and we're now back up to the top 10. Next up on the list is Kevin Magnussen, who's right in front of us. Magnussen having DRS as well, but with our fresher tyres, we keep the slipstream. We try to go around the outside of him, going into the end of the DRS straight. Magnussen gives us enough room, and we're up to P9 now. Next on the list is Daniel Ricciardo in the RB. He had a shocking start, but is still remaining in P8, but not for much longer. As I try to make a move on the left, on the inside there, he leaves the door open pretty much for me to make the move, and I make the move stick him now to P8. Tsunoda, his teammate, is next on the list in P7, and after that is Zhou, and then Hamilton, and then Gasly, I believe, who's now up to P3. But yeah, the next one on the list is Yuki Tsunoda, and we go around the outside of him actually on the last corner of the lap. Not a very obvious overtaking spot there, but we do make the move stick, and we're now to P7. And now we move on to lap 25. We see Zhou Guanyu in front of us, and we lunge down the inside of turn 1. Zhou giving us just enough room there, and we move up to P6. We're getting these overtakes done very quickly and very efficiently. So good stuff there from us as we move up to P6. Next on the list is Carlos Sainz now in P5, and with our superior grip, we tried to sneak down the inside there. It was definitely not on. But we move around the outside of him on this right-hand corner here. Again, not a very obvious overtaking spot either, but Sainz gives us the room, and we're now to P5. P5, very good stuff there. Got to remember, all these cars are pitting as well, so we will hopefully regain the lead, as we see Verstappen now battling with Norris for the lead of this race now that we've pitted, and Verstappen very much getting his elbows out, and Norris trying to keep around the outside here, but he does like the inside line go for this corner. But remember, the inside line is actually not very good for this corner, as you can see Verstappen taking the lead of the race from Lando here on lap 25. So Them two are going to be battling out very much so for the lead here until one of them pits in. And we'll see who pits in first. It's actually going to be Verstappen who pits in first on lap 25. And Norris stays out, interestingly enough. I would have followed Verstappen into the pits there, but nonetheless, Verstappen is pitting in, which does give him the undercut advantage, even though technically I guess it would be an overcut at this point. Actually, no, it would be an undercut. But nonetheless, he makes his pit stop now. Hamilton moving up to third now because Gasly is also pitting in. And next lap, Norris comes in for his pit stop. Coming in on lap 27 here, coming onto the hards now. That was fun out of context, but nonetheless, he puts on the hards. As you can see on the timing screen on the left, we've retaken the lead of this race, and considerably, I might add. But the question is, will Verstappen be ahead of Norris coming out the pit lane here? Yes, he will. You'll see him on the left-hand side momentarily. There he is. And he's gained some distance ahead of Norris. Thankfully for Norris, though, he does remain ahead of Ocon now, who's actually moved up to P4. Very good stuff there from Ocon. He does need to pit in again, unfortunately, but he has made those medium tyres work to great effect. As we move on to lap 33 now, Hamilton in a battle with Pierre Gasly here for P5. Gasly punching well above his weight, but the Alpine's currently 4th and 5th, or maybe 4th and 6th, because we've got Hamilton battling away with the Alpine here. But Hamilton does have the optimum line for the next sequence of corners, so I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton takes the position away from Gasly here as he goes around the outside. And sure enough, Hamilton takes P5 away from Pierre Gasly. Very good stuff there, which means Mercedes have a good haul of points heading their way as long as the race finishes like this. And barring any interruptions, hopefully it will, as we move on to lap 36 now, going down the main straight, and there's a red flag! A red flag on lap 36 of this race. What has caused a red flag, I do not know, but we are going to find out in a moment, as we see Pierre Gasly, who was just overtaken by Hamilton, spin off at the end of the back straight, and causes a bit of a hold up here. With Tsunoda, well, with Ricciardo and Zhou here parked right up there. I don't know why they can't just go around Gasly. I don't know why they're parked up there. But that parking up has caused the red flag to come out, probably unnecessarily. But yeah, the whole race has been neutralized now. And yeah, we have to pick our strategy for the remainder of this race. And it's given me the option to go onto softs and then do another pit stop for softs. Which I decided to do. And then I see the tyres that everyone else has, and I fear I've made a mistake here as we move on to 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the 3rd time in this video, as we now move ahead now. And Norris also getting a very good start again, blasting by Verstappen. So Norris now at the P2 once again, and Verstappen now has another Ferrari side by side with him, this time Carlos Sainz, who makes the move stick. So Verstappen once again losing 2 spots on this restart. So very similar to the sprint race, we now have Russell in first, Norris in second, and even though it's not Leclerc, we still have a Ferrari in third, with Verstappen now down to P4. Interesting stuff there, very interesting race happening here, but with our soft tyres, our mission now is basically to try and get ahead as quickly as possible. And hopefully reduce the penalty that we'll need to do, because we will need to pit in again, because these soft tyres do not last at this track. And I wish I learned that beforehand, but I didn't. So I should have stayed on the hards like everyone else did, but we're stuck with the softs now, so our mission now is basically drive fast. And as you can see, we're doing that already. We're 1.8 seconds already ahead of Lando in P2. If we could keep that pace going, hopefully we can make this work, as Ricciardo spins out on the last corner of lap 40 and moves all the way down to the bottom of the field. It's not been a good day for Daniel Ricciardo, which has been a real shame because he qualified so well in the RB. Remember, he started P5, as we see Ocon now, who seems to be slowing down again. His Renault engine letting go once again in the race. That's 2 engine failures in 2 races this weekend. Esteban Ocon is out of the United States Grand Prix and is the first retirement from this race. Oh dear, Ocon, oh dear, that Renault engine not doing very good. As we see now Verstappen and Sainz battling away for P3. Verstappen getting past Sainz there for P3. But I have a feeling that battle is going to keep going. to the end of this race, just like the sprint race, because I'm pretty sure Sainz is going to be as feisty as Leclerc was when it comes to going for P3. Speaking of Leclerc, we're watching him in P8 now, going through this technical sequence of corners here in Sector 3, and he's also pulling over as well. The Ferrari engine giving up on Leclerc. He is out of the United States Grand Prix. Unfortunate there for Charles Leclerc. He was doing pretty well after a pretty dismal qualifying, let's be honest. But Leclerc is out of the United States Grand Prix. Unfortunate stuff there for the Monegasque driver. As we move on to lap 47, we decide to cut our losses and come into the pits for another set of soft tyres. This will be our last pit stop of the day, and as you can see, the gap is not ideal. So we are definitely going to be taking a lot of punishment here, and I fear the win has slipped through our fingers. As we trundle down the pit lane now, everyone overtaking us. We're down to P10, maybe even more now. Yep, P11, P12, P13. We come up back in P13 with 9 laps to go. We're definitely not getting the win here. This is definitely damage limitation at this point. As we now move on to overtaking a bunch of cars. We see Hulkenberg right in front of us, and we make a huge lunge down the inside of Hulkenberg at left-hander here, and we make it work. We're now up to P12. Next up is Alexander Albon and the Williams. We also make a huge lunge on the left-hand corner here, going up to P11. Next up is Zhou Guanyu in P10, which is definitely we definitely want to at least get back in the points. And we move on down to the next lap, down the main straight with DRS. We go down the inside, outside of Zhou, and Zhou gives pretty much gives up the place because we're on fresher tyres. And we move back up into the points pen positions, I should say. And yeah, as you can see, I took a very interesting line through that corner, but I was pretty infuriated at this point, let's be honest. Speaking of infuriated, Kevin Magnussen is in front of us now for P9. We've tried to get the slipstream going into turn 1 here. I go around the outside, and I thought I cleared Magnussen, but no, he kept his nose inside, and we made contact going through turn 1 there. And Magnussen keeps this place in P9. I'm in P10 still. Somehow no damage done, and that really infuriated me, so I did a bit of a cheeky move there on the right-hander there, and I take P9. I feel like I was blaming Magnussen in my head there at that point, but that was probably my fault. I probably should have looked at my mirrors to see whether I actually cleared Magnussen. As I lunged down the inside of Tsunoda in a similar way to Hulkenberg from a few laps ago, moving up to P8 now. Next on the list is Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, who is in P7, but not for much longer, as I do the same thing with him as I did to Albon a few laps ago as well. Moving up to P7 now. We've now got Stroll and Gasly in front of us, which are probably going to be the last 2 cars we overtake, because the other cars in front of them are pretty high up. As I do make a bit of a miscalculation there, going down the inside of Stroll, I bump into Gasly. Thankfully no damage done to the pair of us. I move up to P6, and now with Gasly in front of us, I head down the inside and I move back up to P5. But as you can see, Hamilton's 5 seconds up the road, and with my soft tyres not doing their best right now, I don't think we're going to get any further than P5, unfortunately. So that's a shame for us. We definitely should have gone to the hard tyres at the restart there. As we move on to the last lap of the race, Sainz looking down the outside of Verstappen with DRS blast by Verstappen on the last lap of the race. And even Hamilton looking to make a move onto the podium of this race. But Hamilton sadly does not make the move stick. But Sainz does, so Sainz snatches P2 away from Verstappen at the death of this race. Verstappen moving down to P3, which is definitely not good for his championship hopes. Because in front of the pair of them, Lando Norris, P2 in the championship currently, is going to win the United States Grand Prix and take 10 points out of Verstappen's lead over the 1 point that he gained from the sprint as well. So that's an 11-point swing in total for the championship in Norris's favour. So the gap for the lead has definitely gone down. For us though, what could have been? We messed up. It's P5.
What a way to head to victory! Lando Norris takes the win!
And let's not underestimate how hard it is for these drivers to know exactly what's happening with the conditions. When you're in the car, you have drops falling onto your visor. It's hard to know whether those drops are actually sticking to the track, if water's building up, or if it's still dry. So it's a tough call to make, and it is really a question of risk versus reward. So great decisions made by this driver today.
And look at that, they're making their way out onto the podium now. Great race for the McLaren team, and I'm very happy to see them there on the top step of the podium.
So there we go, 56 laps of the United States Grand Prix done. It's Lando Norris who takes the victory in Austin. Carlos Sainz in P2 and Verstappen in P3. Overall, an 11-point swing in Norris's favour for the championship. Verstappen will still be in the lead of the championship, but the lead will have reduced significantly, which definitely makes things very exciting for the final 5 races of the season. Remember, next week is Mexico, and the week after that we've got Brazil. So we got a triple header, and then I think it's like a 2 or 3 week break, and then we got another triple header to finish off the season. So things should be very interesting going into the final few races of this season. But yeah, after 56 laps, it's Lando Norris who is the victor of this race. Carlos Sainz in P2, Verstappen in P3. Lewis Hamilton in P4, George Russell in P5. What could have been for us? We should have chosen the hard tyres on the restarts, but that's the benefit of hindsight in the end. Lance Stroll in P6, very good result for him there. Gasly in P7, Oscar Piastri in 8th, Yuki Tsunoda is 9th, and Zhou Guanyu, who did start in P4, ends up at least taking a point for Sauber in P10. As for the rest of the classified finishers, Magnussen is in 11th, Bottas in 12th, Fernando Alonso in 13th, Sergio Perez is 14th, Ricciardo 15th, Sargent 16th, Albon in 17th, and Nico Hülkenberg is the last of the classified finishers in 18th. And we had 2 retirements, which was Charles Leclerc and Esteban Ocon. And there we go, that is the United States Grand Prix done and dusted. We had the sprint, we had the main race, it was fun stuff. Next race is in a week's time, which I believe is the 25th of October. It's the Mexico City Grand Prix, not a sprint in Mexico, but it is the second of the Americas triple header. We're heading down to Mexico, and then after that we'll be heading down to Brazil, which is another sprint race. We do have 3 sprint races within, 3 sprint weekends within 6 races, which is absurd. We haven't had a sprint in a long time, and all of a sudden there's 3 of them. But nonetheless, a week's time, Mexico City Grand Prix, the championship is heating up, definitely in the simulated world, maybe not in the real world, but in the simulated world it's definitely heating up, so make sure to tune in for that one. As for the standings, after the United States Grand Prix, Max Verstappen's lead to Lando Norris is now 23 points. So we are less than a race victory gap between the top 2 competitors here for the championship. Charles Leclerc remains in P3 despite retiring from the race, but Yuki Tsunoda is now only 4 points behind the Monegasque driver in P4. Hamilton closing in on the pair of them in P5, and Carlos Sainz closing in on all of them, only being a point behind the person who's replacing him at Ferrari next year. Alonso in P7, not scoring anything. Pierre Gasly in P8. Oscar Piastri in P9. And George Russell now moves up to the top 10 on 102 points. Only 1 point behind the Aussie driver in the McLaren. As for the constructors, Ferrari maintain their lead. The gap between them and Red Bull is now 18 points. And McLaren now only 3 points behind Red Bull. It's definitely a three-way fight here at the top for the Constructors' Championship. But don't discount Mercedes either, who are now in 4th place on 255 points. They could spring a surprise yet, despite the limited amount of rounds left in this season. RB slipped down to 5th. Aston Martin remain in 6th. Kick Sauber remain in 7th. Williams remain in 8th, but Alpine do close up a little bit. They are now 7 points behind Williams. And Haas still remain in last. They are currently 29 points behind Alpine. A couple of good results their way could bring them into the fight for P8, but I'm not so optimistic at this point. I feel like Haas are going to finish last in our simulated season, which is unfortunate, but hopefully they can at least get to triple digits before the end of the season. And there we go, that is the United States Grand Prix done and dusted. A very long video, but that's because we had the sprint qualifying and the sprint as well as the qualifying in the race. So yeah, hopefully you watched this all the way through. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, even comments. Engagement is always good and all. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this race. Hopefully I'll see you for the next race in Mexico in a week's time. And yeah, hopefully you'll have a good day and make sure to tune in for the next one.